Hong Kong's so-called umbrella protests, or snowballing, into what's shaping up into one of the biggest challenges to Beijing's authority since the Tianamen Square protests of 1989. This is the scene on the evening of day 4 of those protests occupying the center of one of the world's financial hubs. It all started with students protesting China's rejection of local demands to elect a chief executive of the islanders' own choosing. Instead, those candidates to be handpicked by Beijing. Who's driving the protests? Will Beijing crack down? And what future for that territory that was handed over by Britain in 1997? Today in the France 24 debate, Hong Kong protests. And joining us from the territory, freelance reporter Chris Cheng, who's been out and about throughout the last 4 days. Thank you for being with us. And in our studios, Antoine Bondaz, Associate Fellow at the Asia Center. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, the France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter our hashtag F24debate. And as we were saying at the top, they are camping out once more right in the heart of Hong Kong, where all those skyscrapers are. Protesters saying they're determined to get their way.
We are just striving for two things, simple things. The first one is
I don't have the tweets,
for the apologies from the Hong Kong government and also Hong Kong government police. And the second thing, we are just striving for our basic rights, which is the real democracy.
People Republic of China, they are controlling our universal suffrage, which is not a real universal suffrage. So we want the government, we want to have our citizens to represent Hong Kong, the real citizens to represent Hong Kong.
Just before we went on air, Chris Cheng, we were having the discussion. Are what the people of Hong Kong asking for is more democracy or as much democracy as they had up to now?
Or I'll say true democracy. So with civil nomination, one person, one vote. So that means we want to choose our candidates and we want to vote for our candidates.
Talk us through it, Chris. How have things snowballed over the past week?
It actually started on Monday, when the students started boycotting classes and go to government's offices. But then it went on until Friday. They want to rush into the Tianamen Square, which is outside the government, and police started action to put on like a siege outside the government offices to stop protesters getting in and out. And on Saturday, the police tried more actions, and yesterday tear gas was used. Upon the press conference of the police, they say 87 tear gas was used in 9 locations. So that's a huge number for Hong Kong, which tear gas hasn't been used since for like almost 50 years.
So this is a first, Chris. Would you say that this is a big crackdown?
Yes, because the last time tear gas was used was like 10 years ago on Korean protesters on the World Trade Organization. So last time tear gas was used on Hong Kong citizens was really 50 years ago. If this is not a huge crackdown, I couldn't put any other words on that.
And what's been the situation in the past hour where you've been?
Yes, I just been to Mong Kok in Kowloon and the Admiralty outside the government center offices. So protesters are in huge numbers, highly spirited, planning to stay on whole night. I actually talked to the leaders of the Federation of Students as well. They say they'll continue staying on at least until 1st of October, which is the National Day and sort of, they say, the birthday of Communist Party. They're saying they will give them a big present, which is protesting.
All right, let's pick up on that point with Antoine Bondaz. Yeah, Wednesday is China's National Day, and we're getting word there might be protests not just in Hong Kong, but also in the former Portuguese colony of Macau.
Yeah, it may happen actually in Macau also, but today the real issue is happening in Hong Kong. And the idea of the people organizing the demonstration was, of course, to keep it going till Wednesday, of course, to send a message actually to the Chinese government. As you know, the Chinese government actually is using all the censorship tools they can use in mainland China actually for the Chinese people not to know what's going on in Hong Kong. But it's not only for the Chinese media, it's also, you know, for all the Asian people traveling and all the Chinese traveling during the National Day. Many Chinese mainland tourists will go to Hong Kong or are supposed to go to Hong Kong for the National Day. And actually, that's a way of sending them a message directly, not through the media, but directly to the Asian and to the mostly Chinese mainland tourists coming to Hong Kong in 48 hours.
And would you agree that this is the biggest defiance to Beijing's authority since the Tianamen Square crackdown of 1989?
It's difficult to say that because it's happening in Hong Kong, not in mainland China first. It is actually a big one to the Chinese government. I think maybe the last one was in '97 when Hong Kong actually went back to the Chinese mainland. But it's for now, it's not comparable to the 1989 Tiananmen Square demonstration.
Chris, let me ask you this question. When there was the handover in 1997, everyone predicted that at that particular point in time, Beijing would just roll in and take over, and that would be the end of any sort of freedom in Hong Kong. That didn't pan out. Hong Kong's, over the last decade and a half, been this sort of window on the world for Beijing. Why do you think there's been this sort of curbing of Hong Kong's freedoms that's been decided now?
Well, it sort of started 2 years ago when the current chief executive C.Y. Leung come on, and one of the opinions in Hong Kong is that he is an alleged Communist Party member, and he isn't like the past chief executive. He's doing anything to sort of make Hong Kong people angry, and he does not reserve on his measures like anything, because when he was campaigning for his election, sort of election we call it, 2 years ago, he was once exposed by his opponent saying tear gas and riot police will be used one day in Hong Kong when there's a situation like this. So we have a joke in Hong Kong right now that well, he really has made his promises here, because tear gas and riot police is really here.
All right, hang on a second. Let's listen to Hong Kong's chief executive. He's rejecting those calls, by the way, by protesters to step down, and he's reiterated the stated position that's been agreed to with China.
Hong Kong is a democracy within the concept of one country and two systems. Whatever method we use to elect or select the chief executive, at the end of the day, the elected candidate requires the appointment of the central government.
Chris Cheng, what say you to that?
Well, we say we want, as I have said, we want true democracy. Well, we want to keep I think most of the people in Hong Kong want to keep a good relationship with China, but like it's starting to feel like Hong Kong people is having their own identity. So we're not saying we're not ethnically Chinese, but we're saying we're mostly Hong Kongers. So we want our own chief executive for us, not for China, not begging for China's approval. We want our people for ourselves.
Some are saying, tell me if I'm wrong about this, Chris, that Hong Kong, to a certain degree, has outlived its usefulness as this window on the world. Now that places like Shanghai have grown into such huge financial hubs.
I actually don't agree, because there's so many Chinese money in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is such an international place. This is the only place inside China that you're allowed to be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. I would still say Hong Kong is a window, but not only a window to China. It's also a window to the world itself. Like I'm saying, Hong Kong is important as itself, not only to China.
Antoine Bondaz, how does Beijing view Hong Kong?
As part of the Chinese territory, of course. But then I think that the Chinese dilemma today is how to respect the one country, two systems, and how not to send the wrong message, the wrong signal also to Taiwan, because nobody's talking about Taiwan, but the idea behind that was for the Chinese to promote the reunification with Taiwan, to incorporate Taiwan into the Chinese mainland, using the principle of one country, two systems. And with what's happening today, actually, with kind of a little bit change that principle.
And Taiwan's president's been vocal, by the way.
Exactly. It could be like the wrong message actually is a very wrong message sent to the Taiwanese. And you're going to have like some election in Taiwan in 2 years, the presidential elections, and it would be a nightmare for the Chinese if some independentist would come back to power.
So let me bring you back to the question I asked Chris. Why then this decision to have Beijing choose the candidates for the next?
It's a little bit actually more complicated than that. Beijing is not choosing the candidate directly. It's a college of kind of special people representing the Hong Kong city, the city of Hong Kong, that would choose 2 or 3 candidates. So for the Chinese point of view, it's not directly Beijing choosing it. It's mostly that college. But then, of course, it's a problem, because what's the representativity actually of that college, and what is the influence of Beijing? And of course, behind it, Beijing has an influence. But Beijing can still say officially that they are not interfering into it.
What's the future looking like, Chris, for you inside of Hong Kong? We know that a lot of people now say, because it's a territory that's not just islands, by the way, there is a little tiny sliver of mainland there. It's a territory now where young people feel as though their prospects are not what it was like for that of their parents' generation.
Yes. Well, I feel like it's a slow process, but speed up in the past 2 years, that our freedom is slowly taking away and away. So we see media, news sites, newspaper starting to fail. We see more tightened control on the people. We see police do not reserve the power on us. And we see a lot of things that makes up, I think China is really starting to get to real control, get their hands over Hong Kong. It's not like 10 years ago. We're starting to get afraid of what our future will be, not like our last generation, yes.
And you're talking to us right now on Skype. What have social media been like the last 4 days?
Hong Kong people mostly use Facebook, so most of them will share messages on Facebook, and especially some pages like Scholarism, Federation of Students. These are the prominent student groups that started the protest. They have a lot of information on there, and also Occupy Central. It was another movement, not like the student movement, but they announced they would join in and give the resources to the students to carry on the protest. So most of the people in Hong Kong will be watching these places, and there's a community on Twitter as well, so you can follow the hashtag HK926 or Occupy Central or so on to follow that on Twitter.
And right now, the situation in the center of town, we've seen, it was at the end of the week, it was high school pupils. Now we've seen some teachers go on strike. We've even had people in some businesses. How do you see between now and Wednesday, when again it is the national holiday in China?
I think there will be more and more people, because as I said, after almost 90 tear gas bullets, there's still more people staying on overnight, not like staying for a few hours and go. They're staying overnight, working in shifts, some going back home, some going in to protest again. So they will really stay on until the National Day, and the National Day fireworks just been cancelled by the government as a response. So I think they're really highly spirited and decided, highly determined to stay on until that day and do a huge protest as the student will lead them.
All right, a couple of international reactions for you now here on France 24. The White House says it supports the aspiration of the Hong Kong people. It says it's watching the protests closely. Britain, the former colonial power, talking about the right to demonstrate inside of that territory. Now, earlier, the Chinese Foreign Ministry hinting at the unseen hand of foreign-led manipulation behind the protests.
Hong Kong is China's Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China and purely our internal affair. We are resolutely opposed to any foreign country using any method to interfere in China's internal affairs.
Antoine Mondaz, how do we interpret that statement?
It's actually quite classic for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs to use the hand of the foreigners. I'm not sure that this time, on the Hong Kongese issue, foreign countries are intervening in anything. Plus, the whole world has interest into Hong Kong. The whole world has interest into Hong Kong not to blow up, and for a crackdown not to happen in Hong Kong. So actually,
including Beijing?
Including Beijing, of course. You know, Hong Kong is a financial hub of the Chinese mainland. You have so much money, as Chris said, so much money from the mainland transiting via Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is such a big asset that Beijing cannot afford to lose it. But in the same time, what is very important is from the White House or the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also all call of calm from any side of it. It was actually more, it was not one-sided, just to defend the protest. It was maybe more like nuanced than
it was a measured call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But of course, supporting indirectly the protester.
Banks saying that they're going to be closed for the time being. So what's your prediction? There won't be a major crackdown between now and Wednesday?
It's almost impossible to know it yet. I mean, it's very difficult to have any forecast. It seems that there should not be a crackdown if the demonstration is not like getting violent. And so far, the demonstration has not been violent. It has been very calm, a very young one, but a very calm one. Completely different, you know, from the demonstration you may have in mainland China, in some countryside issue over like rural issue or local issues.
Chris Cheng, you agree?
Yes. I think they will stay on. And there's really no reason not to stay on.
All right, what's your plan, by the way, for the coming hours? Are you going to go get some sleep, Chris?
I already got some hours of sleep. I'm actually going down to see them again because two leaders was detained for 33 hours in the last day and just released last night. So I'm going to go down and talk to them again. They're talking to the protesters all around the places and tell them what their plans are.
Chris Cheng, I want to thank you very much. Do stay in touch with us here at France 24. And thank you for joining us this late Hong Kong time. I also want to thank Antoine Bondaz. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll have news headlines. And in the France 24 debate, we'll then go to Washington, where India's Prime Minister is going to get the red carpet treatment after a rock star welcome in New York. Stay with us.